If you were asked to name a luxury city in the US, you might say something like Miami or San Francisco, New York City, Chicago. You might not be thinking about Pittsburgh, but did you know that Pittsburgh was once one of the wealthiest industrial centers on earth? In the late 19th century, Pittsburgh was fast becoming a leader in multiple industries. And the leaders of these industries in Pittsburgh amassed a ton of wealth, and they are responsible for many of the museums and foundations and universities that are a core part of the Pittsburgh you know today. And the neighborhoods where many of these executives and leaders lived are still around today, and so that is the purpose of today's video. So I'm going to give you a quick tour around the Pittsburgh region and talk about 4 specific neighborhoods that we can trace their history and their architecture. We're going to talk about how Pittsburgh evolved from having city mansions and how some of that wealth moved out to the suburbs. We'll get a great picture of where the Pittsburgh old money used to live, and some of it still lives there today. I am Mark McClinchie. I'm a Pittsburgh real estate agent specializing with out-of-state buyers moving to the Pittsburgh area that need assistance, learning about the neighborhoods, learning about the school districts, and helping them make the transition to find the areas that might be the best fit for them. If you are considering a move to the Pittsburgh area, please reach out, call, text, or email. We'll set up a consultation, learn about your needs, and set up a plan to make a seamless and stress-free transition to the Pittsburgh area. So one of Pittsburgh's earliest elite neighborhoods was the neighborhood of Squirrel Hill. People were trying to escape the river towns in the downtown area that was filled with industrialization, and they wanted to get away from that, so they ended up in Squirrel Hill. There was a big move by wealthy industrialists moving outward into the East End in the late 1800s. They were seeking cleaner air, higher elevation, and escape from the smoky industrial core. Some of the areas that you can see that have a connection to this era are homes along Woodland Road, Shady Avenue, and Beechwood Boulevard. And today in those areas, you see tons of mature trees, a winding topography, and certainly some of the wealthiest Pittsburghers live in these areas. One of my favorite neighborhoods in Squirrel Hill is kind of tucked right off of Forbes Avenue, close to Carnegie Mellon. It's Murdoch Farms. This was one of the earliest luxury master plan communities. In Murdoch Farms, you see larger lots, you see a lot of unique architecture, but there's a consistency there that really is unique to that neighborhood. To this day, Murdoch Farms is one of the wealthiest areas in the city of Pittsburgh. One of the things that's kind of unique about Squirrel Hill is some of these homes, these wealthy, affluent homes, they kind of just blend right into the neighborhood. You're really not noticing how out of place they are. Squirrel Hill, amazing neighborhood. Be sure to add it to your list if you're thinking about a move to the city of Pittsburgh. All right, so if Squirrel Hill has the kind of intellectual feel, kind of an understated feel, well, at the bottom of the hill is something very different, a much more prominent, in-your-face kind of wealth. We have the neighborhood of Shadyside. We have, of course, the famous Millionaires Row along 5th Avenue, as well as pockets of large mansions throughout the Shadyside area. Shadyside feels more visibly elite and socially prominent. The early 1900s Pittsburgh wealth concentrated heavily here. Some of the city's grandest and most historic homes are built right in Shadyside as industrialists wanted to get away from the industrial center and move to a place that was a little cleaner, a little quieter, and they could relax in their big old mansions, and you see many of them still standing today. Some of the types of homes that you'll see in the Shadyside area include mansions. Many of them have carriage houses. You see lots of formal gardens. You have grand entrances. Much of old Pittsburgh society centered around this corridor. Although Pittsburgh's economy and just life in general is very different than it was in the early 20th century, Shadyside continues to be one of the most prominent and affluent areas within the Pittsburgh region. It's popular because of the vibrant business districts on Walnut Street, Ellsworth Avenue, and South Highland Avenues. And you have a mix of luxury apartments, restored Victorians, and many of those original mansions still exist today. Shadyside also has a lot of apartments and a lot of student housing. You see a lot of mix of different generations living, and it is a great place to live. It has such easy proximity to the hospitals, the universities. Public transportation is very easy to access. And as I mentioned, there's lots of great walkability to parks, to businesses, to cafes and restaurants. So all this talk about Pittsburgh area neighborhoods gets me to thinking that if you're watching this video, you might need more information about what it's like living in the Pittsburgh area and need more details about some of the most popular neighborhoods within the region. So you go down to the description in this video or hit the QR code on your screen. You can access my free Pittsburgh relocation guide. Learn about what it's like living in the region, all the great things that make Pittsburgh such a great place to live, and details about numerous neighborhoods that might be a good fit for you. Get details about the real estate markets, the school districts in those areas, and download that guide now so you can start your research on learning more about what it is like living in the Pittsburgh area. Next, we'll move just a little bit further down Fifth Avenue and take a right on Penn Avenue. We end up in the neighborhood of Point Breeze. So Point Breeze isn't quite as big as Squirrel Hill or Shadyside, but it also has great historical roots to some of the most affluent families that lived in the Pittsburgh region in the early 20th century. You will see tons of historic homes that are really grand and very large. Point Breeze originally was along the trolley line, so many of these homes had carriage homes, and these were all before the advent of the automobile. And so a lot of these homes, these gorgeous homes in the Point Breeze area, were built in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and many of them continue today. A few of them have fallen in disrepair, but many of them have been upkept, and they fetch high demand. Now, one of the great things about Point Breeze, if you visit there today, you can go to the Frick. The Frick is an amazing complex of over 10 acres. This is the original estate of Henry Clay Frick. There's several museums there. You can visit the Clayton, which is the historic mansion. You can, of course, go to the Frick Art Museum. There is also a car and carriage museum, which is quite fascinating. Visiting the Frick is a great opportunity to learn about life for a very wealthy individual in the Pittsburgh area at the end of the 19th century. So today, Point Breeze is a little quieter and more residential than the previous neighborhoods I've talked about of Squirrel Hill and Shadyside. There isn't as much business district, but there are a few restaurants that are quite lovely and kind of tucked into the neighborhood, but a very walkable place right next to Frick Park, which is an amazing city park that right there in the neighborhood you have access to, and you can get to the rest of Frick Park. Frick Park is an amazing place to walk and explore nature in the city of Pittsburgh. So as Pittsburgh wealth was amassing inside the city limits of Pittsburgh in neighborhoods like Shadyside and Squirrel Hill and Point Breeze, eventually people decided to go to the suburbs, get away from city life, and that is what we'll talk about next. Most of the old money around the early 1900s, late 1800s, moved to Sewickley Heights. This was the most prominent area and probably the purest old money community in Western Pennsylvania. Throughout Sewickley Heights, you're gonna see hidden estates along windy roads. You've got gated entrances, mature trees throughout. Outsiders really have no idea how wealthy this area is because these estates sit far back from the road. Blackburn Road is one of my favorite roads to drive through. It's nice and windy, and you're going through the countryside as you go through these large estates. And as I said, many of them are secluded and you really can't see them from the road. I think that's why people originally built there. They liked their privacy, and that continues today. Sewickley Heights has very strict building codes, and in order to own a home in that area, you have to follow a very clear set of ordinances on how to maintain your home and what you can and can't do to develop that home. So one of the reasons that most Pittsburghers don't really know about the growth and the original development of the Sewickley Heights area had to do with Allegheny Country Club, which is a phenomenal country club right in the heart of Sewickley Heights. But it didn't start there. It originally opened on the north side off of Brighton Road. It was a 6-hole course, opened in 1895, but all of the members, they quickly outgrew that space. They moved out to Sewickley Heights. In 1902 was the original opening of Allegheny Country Club in the Sewickley Heights area. So the country club became a mecca of sorts for Pittsburgh's elite. So one of the ways to trace Pittsburgh's historical wealth is to follow the country club. So I want to do now is just point out a few of them. There's got to be at least 2 or 3 dozen throughout the Pittsburgh region, but I just want to share a couple and talk about where those developed in the neighboring communities around those country clubs. Let's start with Shanapin Country Club, which is in the North Hills area. Specifically, it's in the Ben Avon Heights community, which I just featured on a recent video. So be sure to check out that video of my 6 favorite neighborhoods. Ben Avon Heights is in there. Shanapin Country Club has a long history, kind of a quiet history of having members of some of the most affluent residents of the North Hills area. A lot of folks that originally built and developed in the Ben Avon Heights area, many of those folks were members, but now of course it's spread throughout the North Hills area. And Shanapin Country Club continues today as one of the most popular country clubs in the North Hills area. The next country club we'll talk about is Longview Country Club, which is out in the Penn Hills area. You know, a lot of people today think about Penn Hills and they really forget how affluent this area was. It's a topic probably for an entire another video, but Penn Hills, unfortunately, in my opinion, does not have a great reputation today. But back in the day, Penn Hills was home to some of the most affluent and wealthy families in the Pittsburgh region. And Longview Country Club continues that history. It operates today. So next, let's move to the South Hills. In fact, let's talk about South Hills Country Club. This was also developed in the early 1900s for a lot of the prominent families that lived in nearby Mount Lebanon or Baldwin, or especially the Whitehall neighborhood. And the last country club that I'll mention is Chartiers Country Club. So Chartiers Country Club has a long history, kind of quiet. I think there's a lot of people that live in Pittsburgh, especially that haven't lived here their entire lives. Some of these country clubs I'm mentioning right now might not be on a lot of people's radar. These are kind of quiet places that have a long history, and many of the members today have roots with their own families being members generations ago. So right next to Chartiers Country Club is the community of Thornburg. I also featured Thornburg in that video of 6 of my favorite neighborhoods in the Pittsburgh region. So check out that to learn more about Thornburg and all of the amazing homes in the Thornburg area. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about the old money in the Pittsburgh region and how even today we can see the vestiges of that wealth in some of the homes in the communities that were originally built based on the affluent Pittsburghers in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So the big takeaway, you know, at the time, some of these homes were definitely on the flashier side. They were drastically different in the communities around them. But today, these neighborhoods and communities are still thriving and might be a great fit for you, particularly if you are shopping for a city and you're wondering where is a great place to live. One of the reasons why you might consider Pittsburgh is that you're going to get more for your money. As I've mentioned, some of these communities, although extremely, wealthy and expensive homes, compared to what these homes would be in a Philadelphia or a Washington, D.C., you might be surprised that you could access these homes for a much lower price than you would if you were in another city, particularly along the East Coast or West Coast. So if you are thinking about a move to the Pittsburgh area, regardless of your budget, if this fits your budget, fantastic. But if you are in other budgets, totally understand. You need an expert like myself. You need to reach out to me to set up a consultation. Give me a call, send me a text, send me an email. We will discuss what your needs are, and we're really going to spend a ton of time thinking about what are the right neighborhoods that are going to be the best fit for you and your family. So, we'll discover what's the most important to you, whether it's schools or whether it's a commute time or whether it's shopping or parks, all the things that go into choosing a neighborhood. We'll start to identify the neighborhoods that might be the best fit for you and help you make a seamless and stress-free transition to the Pittsburgh region. Thank you for watching this video, and welcome to Pittsburgh.